Welcome to kevinpiece Theater. Since they allow longer content, I thought it might be a cool experiment to stitch together several of my most popular auto-tune stories. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the 90s.
When I was a kid, my grandma had this weird lamp that had a little naked lady statue with wires around it, and oil dropped down the wires and it looked like rain. It was a rain on the naked lady lamp. And I loved it. And I know this doesn't make any sense, but in my memory, the rain was like cinnamon rain. It was a cinnamon rain on the naked lady lamp. And every time I went to her house, I was like, Grandma, can we look at the cinnamon rain on the naked lady lamp? And she always seemed a little irritated when I asked to look at the cinnamon rain on the naked lady lamp. And one time I asked, and she had just had it, so she made my grandfather put the cinnamon rain on the naked lady lamp away in the attic. And looking back, I realized my grandma thought I was being like kind of perverted, wanting to look at the cinnamon rain on the naked lady lamp. But the naked lady part I wasn't even really tuned into. I just wanted to look at the cinnamon rain. When I was like 9 years old, we had a movie theater in my hometown called Studio Art, and it said on the sign that they showed adult movies, and I was very intrigued by that. So every time we would pass it, I would be like, Mom, can we go to Studio Art? And she'd be like, no, we can't. And I'd be like, why? And she'd say, they don't have movies there that you would like. So one time, my grandma was babysitting me, and I'm like, Grandma, can we go to Studio Art? And she didn't know what that was. So she was like, maybe, how much does it cost? And I was so excited, I couldn't believe it. So I pulled out the phone book and looked up the number, and I called Studio Art. And I was like, how much does it cost? And the guy on the phone was like, how old are you? And I was like, 9. And he was like, you have to be 18. And I was like, it's okay, I'm with my grandma. And before he could say anything, I handed her the phone. And now my grandma is talking to Studio Art. And I could see the look on her face turn to horror as the guy was talking. And then she looked at me with this look in her eye, like, we can never talk about this. When I was like 12 years old, I discovered that wine was made with fermented grape juice. So I snuck into the kitchen and got a bottle of Welch's grape juice and thought, wouldn't it be so adult if I had a bottle of wine in my closet? And I checked on it every day to see if it had turned into wine yet, and then eventually just forgot about it. And then, like a year later, I rediscovered it and thought, oh my God, there's a bottle of wine in my closet. And I thought, now is the moment. So I opened it up and it smelled disgusting. And I was like, are you ready to be an adult or not? So I put the bottle to my lips and this like disc of mold slid into my mouth. And I thought, I guess I'm not ready to be an adult. Recently, I had to have a tooth pulled, and then they did a bone graft, and the dentist kept saying they were using cadaver bone. So then, of course, I was like, I'm just curious, is it the bone from one specific person, or is it like a mixture of people? And then the room got really awkward, and the dentist, in a really serious tone, was like, we're not allowed to disclose that information. And I was like, I'm not gonna try and go hunt down their families or something. And, but now I can't stop thinking about the person living in my face. And I sense that her name is Tammy. And now my face is haunted, and that's the story of Tammy the Face Ghost. When I was like 9 years old, for a very brief moment, I thought the word tatas meant toes. And so I asked my grandmother, Grandma, do you ever paint your tatas? And she was like, what? And I was like, do you ever paint your tatas? And she was like, people don't do that. And I'm like, yes, they do. Mom does it all the time. And I was like, anyway, if you ever decide to paint your tatas, I think you should paint them green. In my super fundamentalist church, we did not speak in tongues, but we were open to the idea of speaking in tongues. And that Sunday morning, I sort of knew I was going to do it because I'm dramatic. And in the middle of the service, I said out loud, Shamala Hamala. And everyone around me was like, oh my God, it's happening. And everyone started saying, Shamala Hamala. And I was sort of like, you guys are just copying what I'm saying, but now we're all crying, saying shamala hamala. And my pastor said it was the language that angels spoke. And I imagined the scene in heaven where the angels were like, what's up, Jesus? Shamala hamala. When I was like 10 years old, there was a box of maxi pads in the bathroom, and I said, Mom, what are these? And she said, you put them in your underwear. So the next morning before school, I put one in my underwear, adhesive side up, and went to school, and it was really uncomfortable. And then I went to the bathroom to try to peel it off, and that adhesive is really strong. And I was in there a long time, and then the teacher came in and said, Kevin, are you okay? And I said, yes. And then I thought maybe if I get it wet, it'll peel off easier. So I went over to the sink, and then the teacher came back in, and she just froze. I could tell she couldn't quite comprehend what she was looking at, and she just turned around and left. In college, I was in a relationship with this guy named Adam, and one day where I was working, his ex-boyfriend walked in and said, you can have Adam. And I was like, what? You guys broke up like 2 years ago. And he said, no, we didn't. And then we put our stories together, and this web of deception unfolded. He was in a relationship with both of us for like 2 years, and neither one of us knew. So we sent Adam's pager a message because it was the 90s. And we went to his house to confront him, and when we got there, he was really drunk, and he started crying, and he ran out the front door. So both of us ran after him, and now we're all three running down the sidewalk, crying, screaming Adam's name. And at the time, that was really traumatic, but looking back, that story is really stupid. I went on a date with this guy who said that he was a painter and that art was the most important thing in his life. And I thought, wow, that's so beautiful. And after dinner, we went back to his apartment because I'm a whore. And right when we walked in, there was one of his paintings, and it was just a bunch of random splatters, and in the middle of the painting he had hot glued a Phantom of the Opera mask. And I thought, wow, that might be the worst painting I've ever seen. But instead I said, wow, that's so good. Then we went back to his bedroom, and right on his nightstand was a bowl of condoms and lube, like it was the damn gay community center. And then we did it, and it was actually pretty good, but not like Phantom of the Opera mask good. And I realized if I dated this guy, I'd have to pretend like I liked his paintings, and I just couldn't do that. When I was like 10 years old, I went shopping with my grandpa, and he was like, pick out one of those toys. And I said, Grandpa, I want that Wonder Woman doll. And the woman behind the counter was like, that toy is for little girls. And my grandpa was like, is that the toy you want? And I was like, yes, Grandpa, give me that Wonder Woman doll. And he bought me the Wonder Woman doll, and the woman gave me a dirty look. But the moral of the story, I think we can all agree, is Grandpa made me gay. When I was like 10 years old, we were watching TV, and they had on male strippers, and they started dancing around, and I got really excited, and I said, Mom, are they about to take off their pants? And they looked a little concerned. And then the next morning, I recounted the entire thing in great detail to my grandma. And she said, well, I don't like that sort of thing. And I said, I do. I love it, Grandma. It was the 90s. It was the 90s.